privileged to be in the session today. And again, I may be the person who presented earlier, and you already have um, seen the slides that I presented in the previous session. So the topic of today, that is which was told before, that is interpretation of the electrophysiological test, and most importantly, uh, those two components, that is ERG and VEP, these two will be covered. And in addition, I would also cover in brief electrooculogram, which is EOG. So I guess all of you have presented or attended the session which I had last Sunday or second last Sunday, if I'm not wrong. So these were my learning objectives. So recall the retina in a nutshell, identify layers, then electrophysiology, working principle of electrophysiology, and importance of the test protocol, how this is guided, and finally the interpretation of electrophysiological test. So initial four components, or initial four objectives, these were explored in the initial session. So now we'll be looking for the final objective, which is interpretation of electrophysiological test. So I am very privileged to be here, and I would request all of you, if you have any doubt in between the session, so please note it down or write it down on your chat box. And I would also request Mr. Kapil to raise those questions, so I can answer, or I can interact with all of them. Okay, Kapil, is it fine for you?
Oh, yes, sir, it's fine. Yes.
Yes. So I'm not going through the details of those initial objectives which was primarily discussed. I just go through the each of the summaries that I discussed previously. During our first objective, what did we learn? We learned the retinal origin, when it is originated basically, and the retinal base, that is where the retina is attached at the ora as well as at the disc. Then we understood the thickness of the retina in different areas, that at the edge, at the center, as well as when it is the region where it is originated. Then we explored the different diameters or dimensions of the macula, fovea, optic disc respectively. And we also got an idea that how the foveal avascular zone looks, and how the structure, it is basically a circular in nature. So this was the initial objective, and it was the initial summary of the primary objective. Now the second session, in the second objective, what did we learn? We learned that retina comprised of the 10 layers, and it is basically the 7 neural parts that is comprised of the retina. And fovea is depressed just because of it contains only 5 layers, and the parafoveal region, it is elevated. The elevation is because of it is densely packed by the ganglion amacrines and the Muller cells and the bipolar cells. So this is the reason, that is what retinal parameters is not uniformly present. Then while we discussed our third objective, what did we learn? We learned that retina is a kind of extension of the brain that takes the visual stimulation, and it transmits to the brain, so that it helps us to see. Then photoreceptors are the main source of this excitation. As the light falls, it converts the light signal to the electrical signal, and sends the impulse to the brain through the optic nerve. And there are some lateral connective cells which are known as horizontal cells at the level of photoreceptors, amacrine cells at the level of bipolars, and these all are internal intercellular connection, so it maintains the connectivity between two cells. And finally, as it goes to the brain, and that is the way we can able to see. And we also got some idea of the receptive field, that and we got to know that how the receptive fields work, both the bipolars and the ganglions, with the pictorial representation we came to know. Now now in this interpretation part, this ISEV concept is pretty important. This ISEV is International Society for Clinical Electrophysiology of Vision. So this ISEV guided protocol is important to highlight all the time, because in our practice, day-to-day practice, what we are doing, that is as per the protocol. Some of us are following a protocol from AO to prescribe new glasses. Some of us are maintaining some protocol as per FDA, ICMR. In recent days, due to in this corona outbreak, we are following ICMR guideline. We are following WHO guideline to how to and sanitize our hand with the help of sanitizer or soap, and at least 15 to 20 seconds we have to sanitize our hand and soap. And there is a different ways to how to clean your hand, the gap of your fingers, that have the palm. This is guided by ICMR as well as WHO, so it is a standard protocol. So this is to maintain in order to have a proper hygiene. So iSave is another standardized process that allows you to how to conduct, how to process an electrophysiological test, whether you how much time you should have to give the patient for the adaptation, how you do you use the electrode, where you put the electrode, how much would be the difference between one to another electrode, and if you have some problem, how to troubleshoot that. So these all are guided by ISEP. So ISEP guideline for ERG, for VEP, for EOG, any kind of electrophysiological test is pretty important. So then what did we learn in that guideline oriented objectives? We came to know that different wave patterns of electroretinogram, the normal wave patterns basically, the how it looks from one to another. So if you recapitulate, if you recall those waveforms, that what happened in the dark phase, how the waveform looks, what happened in the light phase, how the waveform looks. I'll show you again in detail because it was a very old session. It was conducted almost 10 days from now, so you may have forgotten most of the slides, but I'll let you recover those all from my drive, and I'll show you how it is. Then we came to know how multifocal electroretinogram looks, how pattern looks, and the different origin of the waveforms. And we also came to know the limitations of ERG. Then we talked much on EOG. We talked much on VEP. So I'm not going to the details of these all. So this is the summary of the session. Now I'll be switching to the interpretation part. So EOG basically shows retinal dysfunction. EOG electrooculogram basically gives idea whether RP is healthy or not. So the photoreceptor guided RP, rod to RP and cones to RP, whether these all are healthy or not. Then VEP allows us to have an idea of the prechiasmatic dysfunction. So the conventional VEP that we usually do, pattern as well as flash, that gives us an idea of prechiasmatic pathway, not the post-chiasmatic pathway. That is pretty important to understand, because post-chiasmatic pathway can be well understood with the help of sweep VEP, not the regular VEP that we usually conduct. Then ICEP guided protocol and normative data, these are the important components. And we also came to know the limitations of each of the protocols, that are limitation of ERG, limitation of EOG, VEP as well. Now today we are going to talk about the interpretation part. So during you interpret, remember ICEP does not help you to interpret. ICEP only helps you to guide you how to conduct the test. It does not give you a proper way to interpret. So what you have to do, so you have to extract the components from ICEP and you have to channelize your proper interpretation. So during while you are interpreting, you must have precursor on your brain that what are the important points. The first point is the demographics. So demographics hints you what would be the age of the patient, what would be the gender of the patient, and occupation and ethnicity of the patient. So these all are all important components. That age would help you, gender would also help you, ethnicity would help you definitely, and the occupation. Based on the occupation also, that is one of the important features that would also help you if whether to give the patient low vision aid, or whether to provide the patient low vision aid or any ancillary aids. Then you have ICEF guidelines that how to conduct a test. Once you are done, then look at the checklist. What is the checklist? I'll show definitely. Then you have to have a normative data. Now you have to recall the normative data on the page, and you have to compare the patient data with the available normative data. Then at the very last moment, you have to show, or you have to note down the reporting parameters, and finally give your own comment. So this is pretty natural checklist or interpretation format for all type of electrophysiological test, no matter what type of electrophysiological test you are doing. It could be ERG, it could be multifocal ERG, it could be EOG, it could be even VEP. So this guideline should have to be formulated while you are interpreting a test. Now, what is the demographic? So remember the red, the which are shown as a red here, that would change from one test protocol to another test protocol. So the date would also change, name, MR number, age, gender. These all will change one patient to another patient. Pupillary dilation would also change, diameter would also change, what type of protocol you are using, whether it is ERG or VP or multifocal ERG, these also will change. But usual white in nature, those are written as white, this may not change. So the machine setup may not change. So in your setup, you may not switch to one machine to another machine, because the machine itself is a gigantic stuff. So you should not have to change the system regularly. So other than that, other parameters may get changed from one to another. So you have to concentrate on those points. So the usual checklist looks like that. So important is the best corrected visual acuity. You should not have to have uncorrected visual acuity. You must have your best corrected visual acuity with refractive correction. Then you have to concentrate on the pupillary dilation. So some test, I told you before also in the last session, in some test it does require dilation, some test it does not require dilation. So which are the tests you have to note down? Let's say flash ERG, it needs dilation. Pattern ERG, it does not need dilation. Multifocal ERG, it does need dilation. Pattern VEP, it does not need dilation. Flash VEP, pupillary dilation does not even matter. Okay. So along with that, you can also have this available along with you, that is a color vision, fundus photo, autofluorescent, FFO, CTHVF. If these all are done, you can mention yes. If it is not done, you can mention which one is not done, and so others are available. So while you are interpreting an electrophysiological test, you must have those some forms of color vision, fundus photo, and ancillary test, because electrophysiological test is not a standalone test to diagnose a case. So you must have some ancillary stuffs in order to guide yourself to a particular diagnosis. So am I audible to all of you?
Yes, sir, you are audible. Yes.
Okay. So this is a checklist. Now what you are seeing here, that is a flash ERG parameter. So why I have written flash ERG now and not before? Because this checklist has to be fixed in all type of test, no matter what it is. It is continuous in ERG, EOG, multifocal ERG, VP as well. So now the normative data and the patient's data would vary from one to another. Now you have to have your own normative data. I told in the last session that each and every setup should have its own normative data. So your normative data cannot be reflected in our campus. Our normative data should not be reflected to other campus, and others data should not be shared with another campus. So one should have own normative data, and normative data should also be as per age. So you must have a categorization of age, let's say 10 to 19, 20 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49, like that. In each age group, you should have at least 10 normal healthy patients whose parameters are taken properly and averaged. So here what you are seeing, this plus minus 26, that is the range. So it varies from, it is average is to the mean is 250, and it varies from 230 to 270. So that is the range. So what you have to do, you have to have an own normative data as per the patient. So if you are having a patient of 35-year-old, you should have your normative data comparison. You should have the proper comparison with the normative data of those people who are from that age group, so 31 to 40. Okay, so you should not have to compare those 35-year data with a 50-year-old patient, right? So you have to have your comparative normative data at that particular age group. That is what you can at least structure yourself, that what it could be. Okay, you have that data, and now there is a deviation. So at your extreme left hand side, these are the protocols that I told, that Scotopic 0.01, Scotopic 3.0, Scotopic 10.0, Photopic, and Photopic 3.0. These all I told you before in the subsequent in the last session. So in subsequently, you can also see that it is the patient data, and you are using the protocol is Flash ERG, and you have used BA electrode. So that BA electrode is a Boolean-Allen electrode. You should also know that what type of electrode you are using, and you have to have your normative data based on that electrode. You cannot and you should not compare your data of a gold cup electrode with the Boolean-Allen electrode. Okay, so if you are doing that, so you must have your own normative data according to the age and your constant electrode that you have already used before. Okay, suppose you have electrode X and electrode Y. So if your normative data is based on your electrode X, so you must perform on a patient with the help of electrode X only, not the help of electrode Y, because you do not have your normative data based on electrode Y. So you have only electrode X. So your performance level would be comparatively compatible with the X electrode. So here our normative data is on B electrode. So we have performed the test on B electrode and we have compared. So this is the patient's data. This is the patient's data, and this is the normative data. So you can see the normative data is around minus 300 plus 390, and patient data is minus 3746, and which is all over the protocol. So that means this patient data is pretty less compared to the normative data. Are you getting? So you see, look at the amplitude. It is 250 and it is 24 only. So it should be 250, around 250, but here the patient data comes around 24. It is pretty less. Similarly, it is 300 minus 300, it is coming as minus 37. It is 390, it is coming as 46. It is 310, it is coming as minus 28. It is 397, almost towards 400, it is coming as 42. So these all are pretty less in both the scotopic as well as photopic phases. So it is pretty less. So what you have to conclude, you see, now recall the normal electroretinogram. So these all are the normal. So it is the scotopic 0.01, scotopic 3 point, scotopic 10 point. This is oscillatory potential. This is photopic 3 point. It is flicker, 30 hertz flicker. So you see this data and close your eyes and have this data with you. So you can at least feel that it is not equal to that what I showed before. So this is normal, this is abnormal. So you see that's 0.01 till 30 hertz flicker, none of the waveforms are better formed. So all of these waveforms are pretty extinguished, pretty less. So that means, so this data shows the parameters of this. So at the end, what you are doing, so you are doing the patient complaints that whether the report is acceptable or not acceptable, how is the signal quality, whether the graph is properly formed or not, and at last you should have your own comment. So one electrophysiologist should have his or her own comments on the comment box. So it would show, it should not be the diagnosis, it only shows whether those parameters are normal or abnormal. If it is normal, then mention it is normal. If it is not normal, so it is outside normal range. It should be equally present in both the dark as well as light adapted ERGs. So it is the reporting format of electroretinogram. Now similarly, flash VEP, you have your normative data. I told that flash VEP contains 4 components, N1, P1, N2, P2. So in our standard, we usually look at the N2, P2 waveform. So we do not consider the amplitude here on flash VP. We only see whether the time is formed or not. So the usual N2 and P2 is around 90 to 120 millisecond respectively. So this is your normal flash VP. You see that A1, P1 and N2, P2. Look at the time, it is around 71 millisecond and 117 millisecond. So it is near this 71 millisecond, which is, it should be within 90 millisecond, and 117 millisecond, which should be around 120 millisecond. So this waveform is normal. It is reproducible. You see there are 2 waveforms. One is little fade and another is little green. So both are, you look at the waveforms, compare the black and the green. So you see it is going up and going down. The next waveform has also went up and down. Then it has gone up and down. It has again gone up and down, and it has gone up, pretty up, and comes down. So the previous waveform also, it went up and came down. So these waveforms are pretty reproducible. So both the waveforms are reproducible and the implicit time is within normal range. So look at the implicit time, and based on that, you recall your normative data, then you can justify the normative data, whether it is normal or abnormal. Now coming back to a case, you see this waveform. So this is the previous black one is pretty lumpy, bumpy in nature, and the latest one, it is not properly oriented as per the previous one. So this waveform is pretty extinguished and it is not at all reproducible. So this could be due to the patient's poor cooperation, poor electrode placement, or it could even be due to the pathology that is present in the patient. Okay, so that waveform is not at all a normal waveform, but the previous one that I showed, that is pretty normal waveform. So you have an idea that how a normal waveform looks and how a abnormal waveform looks. So now coming on to the pattern VEP. Now pattern VEP, it has different parameters that you have to keep in mind. It has a pattern VEP ranges from 120 minute till 7 minute. 120 minute is almost 2 degree. Then it ends up to the 7 minute. Okay, so here what you are doing, you are changing the target. Okay, so if a patient it is having a very poor visual acuity, your check pattern would be pretty large. If your patient has a good visual acuity, so the check size would be little smaller in size. So these 120 minutes, 60 minutes, 30 minutes, 15 minutes, 7 minutes, these are basically at that much of angulation is formed at the nodal point if the patient is fixating at the center. Okay, so based on the visual acuity you have to perform, and you have to also keep in mind what is the best corrected visual acuity with the best corrected vision, with the waves corrected refraction. So patient must use that refractive correction if it is more than 2 diopter, plus minus 2 diopter. So if you feel that data is compatible with the normative data, that means it is normal. If it is not, it is abnormal. So this is the usual normative data. At the center, it is all about the amplitudes, and at your right hand side, this is all about your implicit time. One is at the microvolts, another one is in the millisecond. So these at 120, this would be the probable range of amplitude. At 7, this would be the probable amplitude, and simultaneously implicit times would be like this. So now if you compare this, so this is a good reproducible pattern VP. You see all the parameters which are mentioned here and here are comparable with the normative data. But on the other hand, you see this is from right eye and this is from left eye. So you see in the right eye that all the amplitudes are in normal range. If you compare with this parameters, so if you compare this with these parameters, so you can see that these are within the range, these are within the range, and these are within the range. But here on your left hand side, this is within range, this is within range, but this is reduced. You see that center P100 is approximately 4, okay, microvolts. So this 4 should not be. You see, and the same eye and the same minute of arc, it is around 19. But in the left eye, the same minute of arc, it shows 4. So that means that waveform is also, if you look at the waveform, you can see that is pretty less compared to this. So that left eye, there is something that which is why that amplitude has come down. Okay, are you all getting me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so again, I'm just rephrasing the slides again. So look at, if you cannot see these parameters, you just look at the waveform. You see this waveform and this waveform at 30 minute of arc, it is almost similar. You see one is around 19 and another is around 22. These all are within range. So normal range is, you see that normal range is around 16, 12, 17, 15. So this is within range. Now at a 7 minute of arc, you see it is 22, it is around 14, it is slightly reduced. This right eye and left eye, there is a difference. So right eye it is fine, but left eye it is slightly reduced, but still it is falling within the normative range. But at the 7 minute of arc, while you have reduced the check size, you see in the right eye it is 19, but left eye it is only 4. So it is not within the range. So in the left eye, 7 minute of arc, it is reduced. Now EOG. EOG is electrocardiogram. I told before that EOG helps you to have an idea how the RP is working, the health of the RP. So it is coming as the relationship between photoreceptor rod and RPE, photoreceptor cone and RPE. So how is the situation? So while you are doing that, you have to keep in mind that what would be the demographics and the ISAFE guided test, and that how do you use the electrodes, how do you put the electrodes. Then look at the checklist. Checklist is the diameter of the pupil, whether it is dilated or not. If it is dilated, then what is the diameter of the pupil, then what is the movement of the saccades and how it is. So if the patient is having nystagmus, then test would not be reliable. So during EOG, patient should have had a good saccades, throughout the test, because patient has to see the light at his or her right side, then left side, then right side and left side. But throughout the session, patient should have the good saccades. So if the saccades are not well performed during the test result would not be reliable. So the usual Arden ratio is the light peak divided by the dark trough. So that is the Arden ratio. Sardine ratio usually falls within 160 to 180%. So you see in normal case, normal EOG, you see that formation is like that. It is within dark, it is within light, and is within light. This is within dark, it is in the light eye, it is in the left eye. And these are the saccades. You see that these saccades are well formed throughout the time. So here these are the time, and these are the probable amplitudes in that particular eye. So it is a ratio which is made between the light versus dark. So usual formation that I told before, that is 160 to 180. So here it is formed, let's say it is 301 and 244. So this RNA ratio is within normal range. Now coming back to the abnormal. So see, this is completely flat. So it is not forming at the peak. Here it formed a peak. Here it is not forming the peak. So that ratio has come down. Despite of having a good saccades throughout the test, patient's ordinal ratio is less than the normative data. So the normative data usually stays within 160 to 180. Now it is 126, 129 respectively in right and left eye. So this is not a healthy record. It is not a normal report of EOG. It is abnormal. So the RN ratio falls outside normal range. Okay. So what did we learn from this session? So this session we have learned that different parameters, how a normal graph looks and how it is getting deviated from one to another, how an abnormal ERG looks, how to interpret that abnormal ERG, VEP as well as EOG. Then along with that, all the formats are pretty same throughout the protocols. First demographics, then the checklist. You should have a proper checklist, because I showed in the initial slides that how a normal checklist would look like, and that also should also contain the pupillary diameter, and this is one of the important factors that 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 can put a impact on the electrophysiological test. So there are some tests where pupillary dilation it is important. There are some tests where pupillary dilation does not play any important role. Then you should have your own normative data based on your own laboratory test measurements. So usual normative data should contain 10 individual recordings from each decade. So let's say for an example 20 to 30, 21 to 30, 10 individuals, healthy individuals, 31 to 40, 10 healthy individuals, 41 to 50, like that, so on and so forth. Then you have to compare the normative data that you have and the patient's age. You have to compare these two data and have to show. Then patient complains that during the test, whether the patient has poor complaints or good complaints, whether patient was cooperative to you, or understood the test well enough. So these all should come. Whether patient has poor complaints or electrode placement, if it is not properly placed during the test, then these all should come, because in some test, if both eyes are having profuse watering throughout the test, that could also hamper the test result. So this is one of the patient compliances. So you should also replicate this all while you are performing the test. Or if the patient is not cooperative enough, if you, despite of describing the test procedure in his or her own language, even after that, if the patient does not cooperate, does not look at the target, or uh, blinking throughout the test, or not looking at the target properly, moving away from the target size, so that could also give impact to the test. So that is the complaints. And at last, being an electrophysiologist, because you have to end up with a good comment that whether these all are within normative data or not within the normative data, with other it is outside the normal range. So based on that, your doctor would give the proper would mention the proper diagnosis. Remember, this electrophysiological test, it is not a stand-alone test. By looking at the test result, you cannot diagnose any case, because it depends on the scenario. So just for an example, retinitis pigmentosa may show extinguished response, and there are some other retinal diseases that could also show a plain wave response. So that does not mean that other cases are also retinitis pigmentosa, or the clear-cut case of clear case of retinitis pigmentosa is similar to other diseases. It is not so. So you should also have a good quality fundus photograph, optical coherence tomography, HVF if possible. So all the retinal dystrophy cases do not need require HVF, but there are some cases which needs there are some cases which require HVF test, but not all. So OCT and fundus photograph and autofluorescence, these all pose a good conclusive result at the end. If you have clubbed this all along with your electrophysiological test, that would enhance you to diagnose a case. So this is the session. I think you all enjoyed. Now I'm happy to have any question. Am I audible? Hello? Kapil, am I audible?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay.
Such a wonderful presentation. Just have technical problem in between, and I'm sorry for that. So I want to see the question that you have raised on the chat box. Let me see it. So okay, there is a no question. So if anybody have the question, please come up with the question. And if you want to talk with the sir as well, you can unmute yourself and proceed with the question.
Yes. If there are questions, that is good for me, because if there are no questions, that means not good for
Hello.
me.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, sir. Good
Yes,
afternoon.
yes.
Hello.
Yes, yes, you're audible.
Actually, in case of ERG, if scotopic 0.01 ERG is normal, but if photopic 3 flickers is abnormal, how will analyze that?
So if scotopic is normal and photopic is abnormal, that means you have a clear idea that uh, scotopic rod-driven pathway is working, but cone-driven pathway is not working, because scotopic is normal and photopic is abnormal. So it goes more towards abnormal cone dysfunction, abnormal cone function, or the cone dysfunction that could again lead to the cone dystrophy or some other kind of cone-mediated anomalies. So if your scotopic is abnormal, that means it is rod-mediated anomaly, and if it is related to the photopic, that means it is cone mediated anomaly.
Okay. And sir, in case of mono vision, we have multi-lobe VEP pattern, which we can check in multi-lobe. So in case of albinism, how we will analyze that?
Multi-lobe, we have not discussed a multi-channel VP or the sweep VP.
Yeah.
We have restricted our talk to flash and pattern VP. So if a patient is
Yes,
having
sir.
albinism, so in your
Okay.
while you are performing electroretinogram, all your test result would be hypernormal. Okay, so all
Okay.
your test result would be hypernormal. So the some parameters which are restricted within 200, So that comes around 400 or even more. So it is not a reduced waveform, it is hypernormal waveform.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Any more?
And that's great. So if anybody have the question, please, you can push the question.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, please.
Hello, sir. I have one question actually. Can we detect pre-perimetric glaucoma through pattern ERG?
Yes, obviously, of course. We do have we can easily quantify pre-perimetric glaucoma with the help of pattern ERG, and there is a recent advancement of photopic negative ERG that we have not discussed here. Maybe if we have time in advanced protocol of electrodiagnostic, we can have another session so we can discuss. But our talk is limited to pattern ERG. Pattern ERG is helpful to detect the macular dysfunction as well as ganglions. So while we look at the ganglions, while we concentrate on ganglions, in some cases, some studies that did show that HVF could not able to pick the initial damage, but pattern ERG could pick up. So that while we compare pattern ERG versus HVF, pattern ERG did give a good conclusive result compared to HVF. So in some cases, pattern ERG also pose an important key role, playing an important key role to diagnose a pre-perimetric glaucoma.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Mhm.
Okay, that is it. So, sir, I have one query as well. So, in case of hydrochloroquine using a patient, we usually generally do the visual field test. And what about the electrophysiological test?
In hydroxychloroquine,
Yes, sir.
okay, so in long run, there are people who do use hydroxychloroquine, and in recent corona outbreak also we came to know that is one of the important medicines that also help people to avoid to or to stay away from the coronavirus. So if a person is using a hydroxychloroquine since a long time, whether it is good for the systemic stuffs, but it is not good for our eyes. So a patient who is using that long run medicines, hydroxychloroquine, that could also alter the photoreceptor as well as the bipolar cells. So in some cases, we have seen after using a 5 or 6 years, the photoreceptor changes or bipolar cell changes are available while multifocal ERG is done. So the central sensitivity may not go at the top. So usual multifocal ERG, what we have seen that the central sensitivity gets an apex at the center, but in hydroxychloroquine toxicity, that apex may not get well formed. So that gives an impact on the photoreceptors as well as bipolar cell, and that can easily be picked with the help of multifocal ERG.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, that's perfect, sir. So, I guess we have answered many of the queries. So, if anybody have any doubts, please come up with the question. We are waiting for a few minutes, and also like
Yes.
to notify we are in the presentation.
If at the end of the session, if someone may have any query or doubt, you can directly approach to Kapil or you can email me. So we are available to answer you. We'll be happy to get your question.
Yes, sir. So I guess it's a lockdown. Lockdown. We are in about the lockdown, sir. Is it open from the today in India, sir? Lockdown?
No, it is already open since the past few days. We are doing our clinic, and today also we have our campus switched on. So I'm in the campus now, uh, and
Yes.
Number of patients are less, but still we have the service available all the time. We have segregated, so few of us are coming in some group, few of us are coming in another group. So these all are categorized.
Okay, so sir, is there any procedural changes on the when examining the patient on electrophysiology after this COVID, or anything that
Yes,
electrophysiological society has referred?
yes. It is one of the most appreciated questions that I ever have. That after this corona outbreak, yes, there is not much change, but what is preferred it is not as per I say, it is my perception. So after this COVID or this, remember this COVID will stay with us for next 2.5 years. So that will never go out of it, go out of the platform of the or the screen. That will remain on this under the spotlight. So we have to deal with that. We have to make our own way available. So in this situation, better not to use the contact lens electrode that touches the cornea. So usually what we do use, already we have done a couple of tests during the lockdown session or after the lockdown session. So we usually use the sensor strip electrode that is that you can stick over the cheek and can perform the test. But contact lens electrode, why do we avoid? Because of the hygiene. So we should clean the electrode with the contact lens solution. We have to sanitize the entire electrode because it has come in contact with the fluid, body fluid of the patient. So in during this particular time, we do not instigate ourselves to use the contact lens electrode regularly. So better to avoid that, and we can use some non-contact electrodes, even though we are compromising with the amplitudes and implicit times, because skin electrodes, they do give a reduced amplitude compared to the contact electrode. But for some days, some months, we can compromise that. But after once the situation gets normalized, we can switch to our old process like using Burian electrode. And at the end, I would also want to highlight that I completely forgot. Our institute is going to organize one CPD, that is a workshop, continuing professional development on electrophysiology. That is aimed to plan on 28th of this month. Probably that is a Sunday. So if you are available, I can share the contact, and it is an online session. So it is purely a online session. Mm. And
Okay,
so if you are
so
interested, I can share the details to Kishore, Kapil, so he can let you know. So we can
sure,
have at least a 4 to 5 hour session. It will get started at 10, and we end up by 2 in the second half.
that's great, sir. Is it free, sir?
Sorry, I could not hear.
Is it free, or I have to pay
I
some dues?
I hope it is free. But it was planned for in a form of workshop. But as due to the lockdown, it was initially planned in the last year. But due to lockdown, we could not even forecast what would be the next process. So as of now, what I believe that would be free.
Okay,
So that is
okay,
aiming
sir.
for the basic as well as the different fundamental troubleshootings and the ISEP protocols and the interpretation formats and this electrophysiological test in different pathologies and how the waveform changes from one to another.
Oh, that would be great, sir. And we convey all the messages to all the patients. Hope it will
Yes,
be
we'll
free,
keep
and
in
if
touch with you.
they
We'll let you know.
yes, yeah, okay. So if it's contain dues or payments, sir, please let us know, because it will be difficult to directly pay to the on the digital system. You have a problem to directly pay actually. We can't we didn't have any digital system to pay from Nepal to the India. So if is there anything, it
Mhm.
if it is free, it will be fine. If there is any payment and there are the audience who want to also take the classes by the payment, and it should be earlier than the schedules. So it's need more
Mhm.
than 24 hours from here. So
Yes.
okay,
Okay,
once again,
coming back
thank
to
you so much, sir. Yes,
Yes,
sir.
yes. So no, I'm just asking in that context, in today's context, is there anything else to ask?
I guess we have answered many of the queries. So I don't see any question on the chat box. So if anybody have the question, I directly send to you by the Gmail. So I guess we
Yes,
have
yes.
into the webinar. So once again, before ending the today's session, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude towards the presenter, Mr. Suyog sir. It's pleasure, sir, and you accept our invitation, and we would like to see you on our platform again and again.
Yeah, okay. I'm privileged to join. I usually love to take sessions and to interact with students, with colleagues, and with all the optometric staffs. I'll be pleased if I have another session or anything more. If I come to of any help, I'll be glad. Thanks to all of you again, and thanks to Kapil to conduct the session.
Yes, my pleasure, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Yes, yes. Thanks.
Okay, so we are end of the session. So I'd like to request all the attendees. If there is, I dropped the feedback files over there. So if you want to go with the feedbacks file, please go with the. You can go and check this file.
So, Kapil, can I
And we
go
can.
offline?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Sure, sir. Yes, sir. So thank you so much, everyone.